It is 10 o'clock across the great state of Alabama. Welcome in. This is Three Man Front on Jocks. Pat Conrad, Molly with you until 2 o'clock. So much to get into each and every day. We appreciate you tuning us in. Man, we've got basketball to talk about. Bama, a big win last night against the Texas A&M Aggies. We've got court decisions going on from judges, not only in Tuscaloosa, but now over in maybe in Lafayette, Mississippi. So we've got so much to get into. This is not the People's Court. This is Three Man Front, but we will keep you posted as a little bit of news coming out of Tuscaloosa this morning. We will get to that momentarily because we do want to talk about the game because the game was more important because it was a must-win game last night, yep. Conrad. As Richard Hendricks told us on this program just a couple of days ago, Texas A&M, number one in the SEC coming into that game last night. And let me tell you something, that first half, that was breakneck speed. Those two teams back and forth. What they were putting up a shot in about every 9-8 seconds, something like that. It was crazy. Game was tied at halftime. Didn't disappoint in the second half. Bama does get the 3-point win, 100-97.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, it was a fantastic game. It definitely lived up to the billing. And if you listen to the show yesterday, I mean, we told you probably going to be a lot of points scored in this one. Both teams averaging over 90 a game, offensively speaking, and both teams obviously hit that clip last night. But yeah, I mean, like you said, first half was great, back and forth. It was just good, quality, fast-paced. Guys were hitting shots, especially for Texas A&M. I mean, Alabama had the volume from three-point range, but A&M was a lot more efficient, and they were shooting the ball really, really well. But you mentioned it, in the second half, it kind of came down to Texas A&M. It felt like for a while they had about a 6 to 8 point lead that they would kind of hang on to, and Alabama just couldn't really claw back, and then they finally did. And I mean, what a fantastic shot from Aiden Holloway there with under 30 seconds to go as he's getting fouled, falling to the ground, and just kind of heaves it up in the air and somehow gets it to go in, gets the and one, and puts Alabama up by 3. But hey, A&M had a shot, right? Rylan Griffin, how fitting would it have been? He had a shot on the tip back to hit a game tying three-pointer as the buzzer hit to send it to OT, but he comes up short, and Alabama gets a much-needed 3-point win over the top team in the SEC, at least looking at the standings.
Yeah, the Tide finished the game on a 19-6 run because it did not look good, and then Alabama went on that spurt, and you had Latrell Reitzel's three-pointer with 1:11 left in the game. That gave Alabama the lead for good. And you mentioned Holloway's acrobatic shot with 22 seconds left. But if you look at that second half alone, there were 17 second-half lead changes. There was 31 second-half fouls called and 43 second-half charity stripe attempts by both teams. So it was ugly. You saw Nate Oates get a technical there in the second half. But the Tide made 16 threes last night. That's the most made in the SEC play this year, and the third game in a row that Alabama has had 14-plus three-pointers made. There were 79 three-point shots attempted last night in that game against Bucky McMillan's Aggies. And it was interesting because both teams really took care of the ball. They only had 6 turnovers apiece.
Yeah, I think at halftime Alabama had 2 and A&M had 3 or something. I mean, again, it was a very well-played basketball game in terms of, you did have some fouls. And in the first half, right, it felt like A&M was getting called for everything. In the second half, Alabama, I mean, I think Texas A&M was in the double bonus.
Oh, about 10 or 11 minutes
11 minutes left in the game. So it was kind of weird the way that all that worked out. But, I mean, you mentioned how great they were in the second half. You look at Holloway and Philon, they were the leading scorers last night. They had 20 for Holloway, 17 for Philon. Of those 37 points, 29 of them came in the second half. So slow start for them, but they came along at the end, especially Philon. He was great in that fourth quarter.
You can't say enough about Holloway because you remember last year, I mean, Holloway was a contributor, but Holloway just did not really find his stride.
Yeah.
This year, it's been the complete opposite.
Yeah, he's taking that next step.
I mean, because you look at his 8th 20-plus point game of the year as he finished with those 20 points. So Alabama now improves to 5-4 in the SEC, handing the Texas A&M Aggies their second loss in SEC play. So what happens when you beat the basketball team? The very next morning, your football team announces that the Texas A&M Fighting Aggies will be your homecoming opponent. I thought that was pretty funny.
That's an interesting choice for homecoming.
A little salt in the wounds. Of course, Alabama had a long streak broken this previous year because Oklahoma was homecoming.
Yeah. And they hadn't lost on homecoming in a while.
Yeah.
I don't, and maybe it's just they didn't really have another choice, but I probably wouldn't pick a team that just made the college football playoff for homecoming, in my personal opinion. I mean, but
Probably not.
I mean, you just kind of look at, I don't know. I feel like there's some other opportunities there.
So Charles Bediako, he had an okay game last night.
Yeah, not great.
Not going to be the headliner of last night's victory for Alabama, but a little bit of news on him this morning. So the NCAA, they filed a motion opposing Bediako's attempt to postpone his injunction hearing. Remember, we talked about that yesterday, looking at maybe February 16th through 18th.
Correct.
That was the date that they were looking at. The NCAA called Bediako's request a last-minute attempt to secure an advantageous delay. Notably, the NCAA is arguing that Bediako's temporary restraining order should be ruled invalid immediately. The NCAA also noted to the court, saying that this court should have never entered into a TRO because plaintiff failed to comply with the notice requirements of Alabama Rule of Civil Procedure 65. I do not have my law degree. I have no idea.
Yeah, don't know what that one is.
Do not know what that means. But Judge Daniel Pruitt, about 40 minutes ago, he has ruled in favor of the NCAA that the hearing should not take place in another week. And it is my understanding, unless something has changed within the last few minutes, is that the hearing, which was originally scheduled for tomorrow, is now going to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
As opposed to February 16th or 18th. So we might have some finality maybe about Charles Bediako coming up tomorrow.
And obviously the big deal with this is if you haven't been paying attention, you're unaware, is the IBOP is on Saturday. So obviously a lot of people were, and we kind of even joked about it on the show, right, of surely they're going to find a way for him to play in that Auburn game, if nothing else. But that may no longer be the case. But also this doesn't mean that he's going to be ruled ineligible. It just means that we'll get an answer on that sooner rather than later. So they could very well go to this hearing tomorrow and deem him eligible for the rest of the year, and it'll kind of be the end of that, correct?
Yeah. I mean, listen, the judge might be in a position now. He's like going, why do we need to postpone it?
Yeah, let's just get it. I already know how this is going to go. Let's just get it over with.
I have all the information or whatever the case may be. So it was interesting because all of a sudden everybody nationally sees that the judge rules in favor of the NCAA motion. So folks are like going, oh, here we go. You've actually got a judge that is not going to just be in Alabama's back pocket. So we'll see what happens coming up tomorrow. And if anything else happens this morning, I think there was a conference call between the NCAA attorneys and Bediako's attorneys to maybe kind of hash out, I guess, whatever potentially is going to happen tomorrow. So we will keep you posted on that as the morning progresses. We're going to stay on that topic because joining us in about 5 minutes from now, we're going to talk to Ole Miss Evie because last night the NCAA slapped Trinidad Chambliss's appeal for a 6-year of eligibility. They said, nope, we've got all the information that we need. You are not going to play. And so, of course, now Chambliss, that whatever the NCAA said or didn't say yesterday, they were still going to be in a courtroom in Lafayette, Mississippi. That is the county that the University of Mississippi is located in. And so that case is going to roll on probably next week. It was interesting because Ole Miss had a very, very strong response last night in their statement that they released towards the NCAA. So we'll talk to Ole Miss Evie coming up in just a couple minutes to get the very latest on what's going on with Trinidad Chambliss. Also on the legal front, it appears that Jeremy Pruitt is a step closer to being back on the football field. Now, you remember back a few months ago, we had had conversations about possibly because he won a case, I think it was in DeKalb County, in which he was going to be allowed to be some form of an analyst for Jacksonville State University. Well, footballscoop.com last night was reporting that Maryland head coach Mike Loxley and the Maryland football program is close to hiring Jeremy Pruitt on the defensive staff in a key defensive assistance position. I was told that the case involving the NCAA and Jeremy Pruitt, because Jeremy Pruitt is suing the NCAA for $100 million. He got that temporary injunction in DeKalb County.
I'm assuming that's claiming loss of wages from when he was the Tennessee head coach and what he could have potentially earned if he had been allowed to stay there.
right, and obviously,
It's
a
just a
ding
lot
to
of money.
his ding to his reputation, but
Yes, yes.
also was told that it has been sent to the NCAA is appealing to the Alabama Supreme Court on the injunction that DeKalb County had given to Jeremy Pruitt to coach again. So hate that every morning would seem like we're spending a lot of
Yeah.
time going over law class 101, but this is the world we live in now because the NCAA has no other backbone. They've been neutered. They can't do much of anything. So now the only way folks can battle them is to take them to court.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. I feel like we're going to have a long off season of talking about these types of situations, but it'll be nice once we kind of put a bow on them because again, we assume that all of these players are going to, at the end of the day, be able to play. But there's going to be some very interesting conversations. Like, what does happen? I know they have Deuce Knight at Ole Miss now, but what happens if Trinidad Chambliss can't come back? Because I think a lot of people in that football office are probably under the assumption that he will be back. And so that changes things a lot. Same thing for Tennessee, right? If Joey Aguilar isn't able to play, makes things interesting, and obviously what's going on with Alabama basketball. But yeah, we'll talk about the actual sports again one day.
Hope so, very soon. Coming up next, Ole Miss Evie will give us the very latest what's going on with Trinidad Chambliss, the Ole Miss angle. Peter Rauterkus will be on the bottom of the hour. He covers the Auburn Tigers for AL.com. It was signing day yesterday. You heard from Alex Golesh. You also heard from DJ Durkin. We'll get his feelings on what he has witnessed, he's seen. He's talked to those coaches in regards to their haul out of the transfer portal. Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider, Rob Pate, Rocco Miller will be along. We'll get the very latest in bracketology. So much on this very busy Thursday. This is Three Man Front on Jocks. And it's 10:16. Welcome back in. This is Three Man Front on this cool Thursday. A reminder, tomorrow we'll be live on location. Crafts on 280. We'll be there live from 10 until 2. Now, the event with the Birmingham Stallions will be between 11 and 1 p.m. Guests include A.J. McCarron, the new head coach of the Birmingham Stallions, JoJo Tillery, Michael Hires, Mason Brooks. Free lunch for the first 50 fans in attendance. Free lunch tomorrow on Crafts on 280. Also, there'll be some special giveaways going on throughout the day. So join us tomorrow, Three Man Front Live there at Crafts on 280 in conjunction with the Birmingham Stallions. I just told you about news coming out of Mississippi in which the NCAA has denied the appeal of the eligibility waiver of Ole Miss quarterback Trinidad Chambliss. That does not mean that all roads are dead. And to give us the very latest of what's going on with Trinidad, very good friend of the program, you can follow her work at the Rebel Walk, Ole Miss Evie on Twitter. It's Evie Van Pelt. Evie, I hope you're well. Happy New Year.
I'm doing well. Happy New Year. I'm excited to be here and always such an honor to get to be on with you guys.
If everyone knew all the negotiations that went on last night to try to get her on this program, if they just only
Oh,
knew,
come on.
if they just only knew, just
Oh,
it's a big timer.
No, I know.
I mean, I
no,
just can't,
no.
I can't
Once
reach
in a
out to
blue
people.
moon, I have something to do. So one just once in a blue moon, but nothing more important than y'all.
Okay. All right. I'll let that slide.
I'll believe it.
All right. So give us the very latest, Evie, because when this news comes out last night, and for those that may not be following the, moment by moment situation with Trinidad Chambliss, what did that mean last night with the NCAA denying him once again his availability for Ole Miss this season?
Well, okay, and it's probably good to kind of go back and take a look at it because I
Sure.
even have Ole Miss fans that, follow it fairly closely that thought, oh no, that's that. So, but that's not that. It's just really what happened was initially Ole Miss applied for a waiver for Trinidad to be able to play in 2026. The NCAA denied it to the surprise of probably no one. And then Ole Miss filed an appeal for the denial of the waiver. And that's what has been kind of going on the last couple of weeks. The NCAA has met several times and asked for more information. I mean, they have plenty of information if you ask me. But anyway, ultimately they denied it yesterday. They denied the appeal, so that's done as far as the NCAA, but that's not the final word on whether he'll take the field next year or not because he has a very good lawyer, Tom Mars and William Liston, and they have filed suit in Lafayette County Chancery Court. So, for those who are familiar with Mississippi, that is basically Oxford and Trinidad's home turf, so to speak, and are proceeding with. They're asking. In fact, there's a hearing February 12th to get temporary restraining order. So Alabama fans may be familiar with that because of what's going on with basketball right now. But so that's where we are right now. I think a lot of people a lot of people with a lot of knowledge of the case feel like he will get a temporary injunction that would allow him to play in 2026.
So, okay, so I guess like you're saying there, Evie, there's still the strong belief that he will play. I know that Ole Miss went out and got Deuce Knight through the transfer portal. Are they prepared in the situation that this doesn't go the way we're expecting and Trinidad ultimately cannot play in 2026? Are they fully prepared to move forward with Deuce Knight, or how long could you see this potentially dragging out? Or if they're just that desperate to try to continue to get him eligible for this upcoming year?
Right. It's a good question. I think that they have the utmost confidence in Deuce. I think John David Baker, the new offensive coordinator, and Joe Judge, the quarterbacks coach, speak very, very highly of Deuce. He wouldn't be there, I don't think, if Joe Judge hadn't given the seal of approval. Could be wrong on that, but Joe knows quarterbacks. I think the thing that Ole Miss folks have kind of gleaned from all this is that, it would be great to have Trinidad next season and have Deuce have a season to sit there and kind of learn the system and learn under him. if it doesn't go that way, I do expect it to go that way, but if it doesn't go that way, I think Ole Miss would need to go ahead and maybe see, if there are any quarterbacks in the portal who got in during that window, who between now and summer or fall that they could get. But I think they feel pretty confident. And incidentally, during the portal process here, the portal window, Trinidad was doing a lot of recruiting for Ole Miss, similar to how Jackson Dart did the year before. So Trinidad was front and center with a lot of these guys, and I think they Trinidad and his representatives think he'll be there. But good question.
All right, so I have a quick follow up to that then, and because the belief is that if Trinidad does come back, he will sign a NIL deal somewhere in the neighborhood of $6 million. Correct?
He has already signed a rev share
Okay.
agreement, and so see that's part of
Because my
this
question is, what happens
lawsuit.
if he can't come back? What happens to that money? I guess, so to speak.
Well, that's a good question. I guess it would just go back into the pot, so to speak. I know you can't go over the cap,
Yeah.
the rev share cap, but good question. I believe what it was is it was a rev share agreement. And part of the reason that they signed a contract, and I know it was over 5 million, so I'm not exactly sure the exact number there, but that is now that gives you the opportunity in legal terms, I guess, to show harm. If he is not allowed to play in the 2026 season, then this is what he will be losing. He's projected, anywhere from third to seventh round draft pick. Were he to go in the NFL draft, the money he would make from Ole Miss next year obviously would be a greater amount than that. So they have that basically to show, the actual harm that would be done to him.
Evie Van Pelt from the Rebel Walk joining us here on Three Man Front, talking about Trinidad Chambliss and other Ole Miss musings. I have to ask you, what's been the reaction to Dabo Sweeney's claims
Oh.
against Pete Golding? Because the world of college football definitely sided with Dabo Sweeney on this one. What's been the Ole Miss side or the reaction to what Dabo said?
Isn't it's just I think just kind of like what just happened, kind of the irony, the all of college football siding with Dabo Swinney, as you said, when all of college football is tampering. I mean, it's comical to me. I mean, to be honest, most Ole Miss fans have never. I mean, especially when they had the former coach at the helm, never would have said, "Oh, our school would never tamper." I mean, it's nicknamed the Tamper Portal for a reason. So, I think for most Ole Miss fans, they haven't had the best experiences with the NCAA, over the last few decades. And so I think, there's a little bit of, uh-oh, what's going to happen. But I think I personally, I don't know about y'all, but I'm just not sure the NCAA really wants to open that Pandora's box because, as many receipts, so to speak, as Dabo has, I'm sure, Pete Golding and Keith Carter have them. And then they would be forced to turn their attention perhaps to, I don't know, a school like LSU or, I mean, Ole Miss has a defensive lineman who was offered seven figures in the closing hours of the night of the 16th of the transfer portal from LSU. And this lineman wasn't in the portal. So, you know what I mean? I mean, it's happening. It's happening, and it is what it is. And I think coaches pretty much work, under the assumption that their roster's being tampered with, and that's just, how it goes. So I don't know. I think a lot of Ole Miss fans thought Dabo seemed kind of whiny.
Kinda.
I think, yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I
there's
mean,
maybe a few other fan bases that think the
yeah.
same thing, Evie. I did want to ask you because we're now about a month removed from the end of the season for Ole Miss, and I know we have a long off season ahead of us, and maybe this would be a better question to ask in July. But after the run in the CFP, making the semifinals, coming so close to a national championship game, what can you just kind of say about maybe what's that done for the buzz of the program? Does it feel a little different going into this offseason? Is it finally that, that kind of monkeys off your back. Like we showed that we can do it, and when we get there, we can make some noise in the playoff. Has that kind of increased some of the excitement level for this upcoming
Mhm.
season, or is it pretty even with what it's been the last couple years?
No, I think it is. I think there was it was almost like a proof of concept. We
Yeah.
can go out and get transfer players and blend them in with the returnees and some talented high school kids, but a huge number through the portal. And because when that first happened, when Lane was there, I had people say, "Oh, that'll never work. That'll never work. You can't do that. You can't." Well, I mean, fast forward a few years, and well, yeah, obviously you can, and a lot of people do. But I think it just, for Ole Miss, it was definitely getting the monkey off their backs. Winning that Sugar Bowl was huge. I think there are people that are still on a Sugar Bowl high, because that win over Georgia was really big. But and I think it was big for Pete Golding, to be honest. I mean, everybody figured, they'd win that first round game over Tulane, but I think he did a great coaching job against Georgia. And it just, I think, added, like I say, proof of concept that it can be done. And why not come do it here?
Yeah, great point. That is Evie Van Pelt from the Rebel Walk. You can follow her on social media at Ole Miss Evie. Evie, always great catching up with you. We will continue to look to the west on the court proceedings there in Lafayette County in the wonderful city of Oxford. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Evie.
That is Evie Van Pelt. She joined us on the Higginbotham Hotline. You deserve solutions that are built for you. Higginbotham is your one source solution for financial and HR services. Well, there's the Ole Miss side of things. Joining us in just a couple minutes, we'll go down to Auburn, Alabama, talk to Peter Rauterkus from AL.com, get the latest from the Auburn Tiger football team, and also a big basketball game coming up Saturday between Alabama and Auburn. We'll preview that with Peter as well. Straight ahead here on Three Men Front. We're off and running on this very busy Thursday. Appreciate Ole Miss Evie joining us, giving us the latest on Trinidad Chambliss and that court case. We'll keep you posted on what's going over in West Alabama in Tuscaloosa. It appears that the hearing for Charles Bediako is going to be tomorrow. It's supposed to be tried to be postponed until next week. Now it will be heard tomorrow, according to the judge ruling on that case in T-Town. Joining us on the Higginbotham Hotline to talk about Auburn football, and also got a big basketball game coming up with Alabama and Auburn on Saturday. Peter Rauterkus covers the Auburn Tigers for AL.com. He joins us now on Three-Man Front. It's a little bit quieter on the eastern side of the state, right, Peter? You're not having to go to any county courthouses or try to dust off your law degree to kind of figure things out right now, do you?
No hearings, no court appearances, nothing like that right now. So, in that nature, yeah, pretty quiet right now.
Oh, it's very quiet. Well, yesterday we got an opportunity to hear Alex Golish and DJ Durkin. Just your thoughts on how you wrote about it at AL.com about this impressive roster restructuring for the Auburn Tigers. Alex Golish feels pretty good about it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's, it was going to be a full-scale rebuild. I think we saw that with a lot of the coaching changes, especially in the SEC. It's 60 new players, between the transfers and the incoming freshmen. So really replacing the whole core of the roster. But like you said, Alex Golish and the staff, they feel pretty good about the guys they brought in. On offense, there's a lot of guys coming over with him and the staff from USF. So I think they like just the familiarity and comfortability that they already have there. It kind of, slows down or actually speeds up the installation process this spring and going into this spring. So I think they feel good about where they're at.
Peter, I know you guys have reported this and other people have as well, but in terms of NIL for Auburn and the belief that this year's roster is going to be somewhere around the 30 million mark when all is said and done, is it your belief, because we know last year they made a large investment, obviously going all in for Hugh Freeze, and it didn't quite work out. Is there the sustainability of this, Peter? Is this the belief that for the next few years at least, was this part of when Alex Golish was hired was, hey, 30 million, that's going to be the mark that we're going to have for you every year? Or is it going to be kind of a maybe a wait and see or a year-by-year basis if they're able to offer that kind of financial commitment?
I think, from everything I've heard, I think Auburn is willing to just commit and give Alex Golish and the staff what they need to be competitive. And I think, 30 million is the number that's been reported for this season, but I think that's really only going to increase when you just look at how much other teams are spending every year. The numbers that teams are spending on their rosters, particularly in the SEC, when you've got schools with deep pockets like Texas A&M, LSU, and others, I think that number is only going to get bigger. And I think if you want to compete at the top, which Auburn does, and they haven't, in a while, they're going to have to spend with those guys. So I think Auburn, maybe doesn't have the same type of deep pockets as a place like Texas, but this is a school that has money. This is not a school has financial problems. I think they can compete. But when it comes to the number, I think it's only going to have to get bigger.
Peter Rauterkus from AL.com covers the Auburn Tigers, joins us here on Three-Man Front. I want to go back to something that Golish was saying and get your thoughts on in regards to his conversations once he got to Auburn, and you're trying to navigate the potential transfer portal. Kind of take us behind the scenes and some of these conversations that he was having. And I think it's refreshing that a coach just, listen, if you don't want to be there, we'll move on. I just need to know where you currently are. Those conversations were happening a lot, and I assume he's talking about Cam Coleman.
Yeah, I think that's obviously the biggest example when you're talking about, is he going to stay? Is he going to go, trying to retain a guy? And obviously he does end up going. But I think in general, it kind of just depends on the player. There were some cases where, it was a lot had to do with money. Some cases where obviously maybe it's playing time. Some cases where it's, this is who I want my coach to be. So I think it depends. Obviously, you saw some big names like Cam Coleman, like Deuce Knight, like, some other starters on defense, Jay Crawford, Kayan Lee, who, did end up deciding to leave, and guys that I think obviously you would like to have guys like that on your roster. But I think in some cases you can look at it from the perspective of, you lose a Cam Coleman who's a great player, but that's a whole lot of money that frees up that you can apply to other areas in your roster. And maybe while you're not spending this huge chunk on one receiver, maybe you can go and get a few extra offensive linemen, or you can be deeper at receiver than you were the year before. I think those are all things that were considered when these conversations were having from the money side, and then also just from the on the field side. I think they feel good about the guys that they brought in. I think getting guys that they can develop was a big thing for them, and obviously those developments still have to pan out, but I think they feel confident about them.
All right, Peter, I want to talk a little bit or get your, kind of expand on it because one of the things you mentioned in your article and one of the things that Alex Golich was talking about is the best way I could summarize it is almost like a quantity versus quality approach. And he was talking about the fact that you can now have 105 kids on the roster and on scholarship, but you kind of have to make these tough decisions, right? Do you want to go and get as high up on that number and have more bodies, but understanding that you're not going to be able to pay all the players as much? And so maybe the quality of player is not going to be quite up to par. What can you kind of tell us? Because I know everybody's dealing with this, but I thought it was very refreshing to hear him kind of come out and say, yeah, we're having to make decisions. Do we want a smaller roster that maybe is higher quality, or do we want a larger roster with more depth, but maybe, some of the quality of those players is not quite as high?
Yeah, I mean, I think like you mentioned, it's something that everyone is trying to figure out. Something that everyone's trying to figure out. Yeah, I think when you look at this portal class, you see they kind of got a little bit of both. You look at the top end, and you got some big names like Byron Brown, like the quarterback from USF, Bryson Washington, the running back from Baylor. But you also look at they got, and especially toward the end of the class, they brought in a lot of guys who maybe in the past you would think, that's interesting that they would bring in, maybe a one guy who played a year at Chattanooga or a guy who played a year at Hampton who hasn't really proved himself yet. But these are all guys that they probably wouldn't have to pay as much as they would maybe the third or fourth corner or linebacker last year, but allows them to have the depth now that they can have 105 guys, on the roster. So I think they try to balance it as much as possible. But I think when you look at this roster, there weren't as many big flashy names as maybe you saw on the roster last year, but they got more depth. And like I said, I think this staff is confident about their ability to develop these players, and I think that's going to be the way for this program, at least in the staff side, going forward.
All right, let's pivot to basketball as Auburn did not have a midweek game as they await the Alabama Crimson Tide, who got a big win last night at Coleman Coliseum against the Texas A&M Aggies. So Auburn's coming into the game. Most bracketologists say they're around a 7 seed right now. They can improve that, obviously, with about 10 games remaining on the SEC schedule. They're currently at 5-4, actually the same record as Alabama. Your thoughts where this current Auburn basketball team sits, and a little preview of this weekend's game against Alabama.
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity. I mean, really big opportunity for both teams. It's a quad one game for both teams. Obviously, a huge, huge rivalry game. And then Auburn goes into this game a little bit refreshed. I think gives them an even better, maybe a little bit of an advantage, especially, when you consider Auburn didn't have to play a midweek game, like you said. Alabama did, and they played against Texas A&M. While they won that game, that's a team that's going to press you for 40 minutes, and it takes a lot out of you playing a team like that. So, I think Auburn feels good about their chances. Obviously, it's going to be a really tough game. It's probably going to be a really close game. I think this Auburn team, they've kind of figured out what their identity is and kind of going into the second half of SEC play. I think the Florida game was a huge turning point for them, being able to go in there and play physical against a really big team and not being overwhelmed in the paint. And so I think that will be to their benefit against a team like Alabama, who has been criticized for not being as physical at times this season. So I think that's the type of game that we'll probably see from Auburn's perspective, really trying to impose their will a little bit and seeing how Alabama responds.
AL.com's Peter Rauterkus joining us for a few more moments here on Three Man Front on the Higginbotham Hotline. I wanted to ask you about somebody in particular, Peter, and that's Todd Pettiford. Are you still optimistic? Do you think there's still a point where he could, I guess, turn the corner, so to speak, and maybe start to look like the player that we saw towards the end of last year? Or do you think some of the struggles that he had this year, is it just kind of is what it is, and it might take an off season of more development to kind of get him back? Because it feels like that's kind of, if he can really turn the corner for Auburn, it feels like that could be the second gear they kind of need.
It's interesting because, he's obviously shown that he has it in him. He's obviously shown that he can be a really good shooter, really prolific scorer. But you're right. I mean, we're, 20 plus games into the season, and we just haven't really seen it, at least not on a consistent basis. I think, when you look at just how his role has evolved, though, from last year to this year, I think they're Stephen Pearl has talked about, I think they're still happy with what he's brought them. He's in kind of the sophomore shooting slump, but he's developed as a playmaker. Stephen Pearl's talked a lot about how much he's developed on defense, and I think his leadership on defense has really helped them, especially when starting this season Auburn wasn't very good defensively, and they've really improved going into the second half of SEC play. So I think they're still happy for the most part with what he's been able to give them as a true point guard. And yeah, I think it would just be a huge bonus if they can get that scoring, that shooting touch back from him. Will they? I don't know, but like I said, it's in there. So I think at any point it could always come back out.
That is Peter Rauterkus. You can follow his work there at AL.com, covers the Auburn Tigers athletic teams. All right. Thanks, Peter. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the weekend. It should be a good one down at Neville Arena against the Tide Tigers.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Peter joined us on the Higginbotham Hotline. You deserve solutions that are built for you. Higginbotham is your one-source solution for insurance, financial, and HR services. All right, truck country, need to listen up. This is a big one from Courtesy GMC and Trussell. This just came down the last 24 hours. Right now, Courtesy has just one 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 AT4X left in stock, up to $16,000 off MSRP. When it's gone, it's gone. And the selection, it's huge there at Courtesy GMC. They have over 50 brand new 2026 GMC Sierras on the ground, every trim level, and up to $12,000 off MSRP. From work trucks to luxury to off-road, they've got your Sierra right there at Courtesy GMC. Plus, Courtesy has extended the $399 sign and drive lease on the 2026 Canyon Elevations you heard me talking about last week. So they've extended that. There's only 5 left, so you need to take advantage of that. Every new GMC comes with a 7-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. Go to Courtesy GMC in Trussville off of I-459 exit 32. Online inventory, you can check them out every single moment of the day at courtesybirmingham.com. Courtesy GMC in Trussville. We are professional grade. More three-man front on this Thursday. This is Jocks. Off and running on this Thursday. Thanks for tuning us in. This is Three-Man Front on Jocks. Already heard from Evie Van Pelt, Peter Rauterkus, Rodney Orr from Tighter Insider. He'll join us at the top of the hour. Rob Pate, former Auburn DB. Also, Rocco Miller, the bracketeer, our guest, our three-man front bracketologist.
That's right.
That's what we like to say.
He's the best.
It was a big night last night across college basketball. I know you pointed it out this morning on your morning show, Conrad, how, man.
Crazy night.
The ranked teams, Michigan State loses to Minnesota, which that was very odd. But the strangest game of the night, it's pretty interesting because, a week ago, there were so many players sick on the Portland Pilots basketball program that their head coach, Shante Leggins, he had to play on the scout team during practice. And so as he was practicing with his team, he tore his Achilles.
That's not a good one.
Awful.
So he tears his Achilles, and so last night they're hosting Gonzaga, of all teams, number 6 in America, and he was not going to – he was supposed to sit.
Yeah.
Because he's got a torn Achilles. But as that game got going, he was very quickly up on his little scooter, and he was mostly on his feet most of the night because Portland pulled off the biggest upset in school history, an 87-80 stunner over number 6 Gonzaga. The victory was the Pilots' first game in which they beat a top 10 opponent. They had a 30-game losing streak against top 10 opponents.
Wow.
And it's the first time that Gonzaga has lost to a team with a losing record since January the 22nd, 2011.
Ooh.
That's
crazy.
That is a streak of 141 games in a row.
That's pretty good.
That Gonzaga had not lost to a team with a losing record until last night. And if you remember back, the anatomy of an Alabama football loss, it used to be a quarterback that could run the football and
Absolutely.
throw.
Yep.
And then you had to have one of those magical days like Stephen Garcia did. Sorry, Greg McElroy. What Stephen Garcia did in beating Alabama in Columbia. You just had one of those nights.
Everything went your way. The ball bounced your way. Yeah.
Well, last night, the Portland Pilots, they made 66% of their shots inside the three-point arc. They hit 44% of their shots behind the three-point arc. So that's a pretty good recipe for you to beat the number 6 team in America.
Yeah, if you're playing college basketball and you shoot 59% overall, which is what they did last night, you're probably going to win. Just about every game that you play. But like you mentioned, I mean, it was the biggest upset. I think Gonzaga was a 23-point favorite last night. It was the largest upset in the West Coast Conference in over 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
In my entire lifetime, this is the biggest upset in the WCC. So, yeah, shout out to Portland, man. They're not going to have a whole lot to celebrate the rest of the year because they're 11-14 and 4-8 in conference play. But
who knows? They might get hot in the Western Conference tournament.
I was about to say they've beaten them before. Why not do it again? But Gonzaga is still a very good team. Obviously, just had an off night, and like we just talked about, Portland was just one of those magical nights where you're not going to be denied. And so, very cool moment for them last night. And good. Mark Few now has something to motivate his team with.
Yeah, sure does. Bulldogs now 22-2, 10-1 in conference play, but that record, 141 straight wins.
Yeah, it's
against teams with losing records.
Yeah, it was pretty remarkable. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. You had 3, including that Gonzaga game. You had 3 top 16 teams lose last night, all to unranked opponents. Michigan State falls to Minnesota. Minnesota's not very good. They're 11-12, 4-8 in the Big Ten, and then you had BYU. And potentially the number 1 overall pick. How about this? So AJ DeBonsa, who's the big money guy for BYU, he's going to be either the number 1 or number 2 pick in next year's NBA draft. He goes for 36 points and 7 rebounds, and BYU lost to Oklahoma State.
Ooh.
So rough go there in the Big 12. But yeah, I mean, as for a Wednesday night in college basketball, had a great game in the SEC with Alabama and A&M, and then you get those upsets. Pretty good night.
Detroit Mercy won last night too.
What's the record this year? Do you know?
10-12.
Oh, that's not fun.
Yeah, but they won.
I was hoping you were going to say like 1 and 24.
I keep an eye on them now.
They're your team.
Yeah,
because it was like my lock of the century last year or the year before.
And it hit.
And they hadn't
I think
won
it was
a game.
2 years ago.
Maybe 2 years ago. Yeah.
Because weren't they, what was it? It was like a 28-game losing streak. It was something crazy like that.
Abysmal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I had a dream about Detroit Mercy. And sure enough, I dreamt that they would win. And I said, this is my lock of the century. Detroit Mercy, they are going to win tonight. And
That's just a whole different conversation why she's dreaming about Detroit Mercy.
I guess you didn't have a Portland dream 2 nights ago?
No, I didn't.
That's unfortunate.
Like I said, lock of the century.
It would be pretty cool if that you just had these games come to you in your dreams, and then you could go and make a bunch of money in Vegas just off of your visions.
But yeah, the Titans won last night.
Oh, is that they're the Titans?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it was not an upset in Rupp Arena last night as Kentucky beat Oklahoma 94-78. Wildcats now 16-7, 7-3 in the SEC. Remember a couple weeks ago we were ready to say that Kentucky was going to be left for dead on the side of the road, and here they are 7-3 in the SEC. Meanwhile, the Sooners are dead on the side of the road. They are 1-9.
Yeah, they're bad
in the SEC. I feel bad for Porter Moser. I think he's a good coach.
Yeah, this is probably it for him, unfortunately.
Yeah, they're 11-12 now overall in the season, 1-9. So if you take a look at the SEC standings right now, so Texas A&M and Florida both sit on top with a 7-2 record. Then you got the Wildcats at 7-3. Then you got a trio of teams at 6-3. That includes Arkansas, Vandy, and Tennessee. Bama, Mizzou, and Auburn, all 5-4. So that's a very interesting game coming up down at Neville Arena. You've got the Longhorns 5-5. The Bulldogs are 4-5 from Georgia. Ole Miss, Mississippi State 3-6. LSU 2-7. South Carolina 2-8. And we just mentioned Oklahoma is 1-9. I was taking a look at the net rankings this morning to see if there had been any movement. And Florida has not played since Sunday, but because of everything else happening in the world of college basketball, they actually went up 1 spot in the net rankings. They were 12 yesterday. They are now 11. Vanderbilt stays at 14. Tennessee falls back 1.
Okay.
Yeah, they were 19. Now they're 20. Meanwhile, Alabama, they beat the number 1 team in the SEC, and they fall back 1 spot in the net rankings.
That was a quad 1 win last night.
They fall 1 back. They were 19 yesterday before the game. Excuse me, they were 22 yesterday. Now they're 23rd in the net rankings. Arkansas is right behind Alabama at 26, Kentucky 28. Auburn, they were 29 yesterday.
Now they're 30? Okay. Well, Portland had to jump up over everybody.
Yeah, I'm sure Portland got big time. So, yeah, when you start looking at the hierarchy of the SEC basketball, and Texas A&M loses at Alabama, and they fell 1 spot.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense how.
So Bama wins, they fall 1 spot. Yeah. Texas A&M loses, and they only fall 1 spot.
You got to love college basketball. But, I mean, you mentioned it, though. This is a massive, massive weekend, and the IBOB a lot weighing on it. It may not be last year where it was 1 versus 2, but this could very well be a game that you look back and go, whoever wins this gets a bye in Nashville for the SEC tournament, and the loser does not.
Yesterday was National Signing Day. Rodney Orr from Tider Insider, he will join us next, get his feelings, his thoughts on the Alabama Crimson Tide as they sign a class, a very small class yesterday. The hay was in the barn before yesterday, but Rodney will give us his thoughts and predictions coming up for the 2026 Alabama Crimson Tide.